Berbunyi Pak katanya.
Baik, terima kasih. Selanjutnya, mari kita berdoa menurut agama dan kepercayaan masing-masing. Berdoa dimulai. Berdoa selesai. Baik Bapak Ibu, sebelum kita memulai webinar, mari kita dengarkan sambutan dari Koordinator Program Studi S3 Kajian Budaya. Silakan Prof.
Terima kasih Andani dan selamat pagi Ibu Bapak sekalian. Om Swastiastu. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Pertama-tama saya ingin menyampaikan apresiasi yang luar biasa kepada narasumber kita, Associate Professor Edwin Jurrens dari University of Melbourne, guru bahasa Indonesia dan kajian Indonesia di University of Melbourne yang sangat produktif dalam riset dan publikasi. Di tengah kesibukannya sudah menyiapkan waktu untuk kami berbagi dengan teman-teman pada acara yang kami sebut dengan Cultural Studies Week, Pekan Kajian Budaya. Terima kasih juga untuk Bapak Dekan di tengah kesibukan acara adat dan akademik akur sudah juga menyediakan waktu. Kami mohon nanti kesediaannya untuk memberikan sambutan sekaligus membuka acara Pekan Kajian Budaya. Terima kasih untuk teman-teman dosen kajian budaya, mahasiswa, alumni, dan semua peserta yang tertarik dengan acara ini. Kami menyampaikan terima kasih yang setinggi-tingginya. Acara Pekan Kajian Budaya ini kami rangkai untuk memperingati hari ulang tahun Prodi Kajian Budaya yang ke-23 dan akan ada banyak seminar dengan mengundang para ahli dengan fokus pada kajian budaya, khususnya pada publikasi buku. Karena kebetulan nanti juga untuk esok hari kami akan ada webinar tentang rahasia menulis buku kajian budaya. Kebetulan kami ada alumni yang banyak menulis kajian budaya dan dipublikasikan dalam bahasa Inggris dalam beredar secara luas. Jadi ada juga pembicara lain dari Profesor Adrian Vickers dari Sydney, kemudian Richard Fox dari Kanada. Mudah-mudahan semua senang berbagi karena apa yang mereka sampaikan tentu akan sangat tampak berguna jika nanti Ibu Bapak peserta juga aktif bertanya. Jadi tidak mungkin hanya monolog dari narasumber, tapi juga pasti baiknya ada dialog. Saya tidak akan berpanjang kata, hanya terima kasih dan mohon maaf kalau ada pelaksanaan yang kurang tepat, kurang baik. Kami akan perbaiki terus. Sekian dan terima kasih sekali lagi Bapak Dekan. Kami harapkan bisa membuka acara kami ini. Sekian dan terima kasih. Om Santi 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 Om.
Baik, terima kasih Prof. Selanjutnya adalah sambutan dari Dekan Fakultas Ilmu Budaya Universitas Udayana sekaligus membuka webinar hari ini. Untuk itu kami persilakan Bapak.
Ya, terima kasih Ibu Andani Pertiwi ya. Ibu juga sebagai MC dan moderator nanti. Terima kasih Ibu. Selamat pagi, Om Swastiastu. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom, nama budaya, salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Yang saya hormati Bapak Koprodi S3 Kajian Budaya, Bapak Prof. Dharma Putra, PhD, yang sudah bekerja keras dengan setup komitinya untuk mempersiapkan acara ini. Yang sangat saya hormati Associate Professor Edwin Jurrens dari University of Melbourne. Pak Edwin, saya mewakili segenap pimpinan Fakultas Ilmu Budaya mengucapkan terima kasih karena Pak Edwin di tengah agendanya yang sangat padat masih menyempatkan waktu energinya untuk kami di Fakultas Ilmu Budaya khususnya untuk program S3 Kajian Budaya. Tentu juga yang saya hormati Ibu Andini Pertiwi yang nanti bertugas sebagai moderator. Ibu, Bapak peserta topik seminar hari ini yang mengawali rangkaian kegiatan seminar Cultural Studies Week atau Pekan Kajian Budaya yang dipersiapkan, dikoordinasikan dengan sangat baik oleh Bapak Prof. Dharma Putra. Pertama-tama, untuk memulai sambutan ini, saya juga tidak akan lama. Nanti apa yang disampaikan Associate Professor Edwin Jurrens itu jauh lebih menarik nanti di acara ini. Apresiasi saya dulu mewakili pimpinan kepada Bapak Koprodi, Bapak Prof. Dharma Putra PhD yang telah mempersiapkan acara ini. Menurut kami pimpinan ini sangat baik begitu karena memang kitchen daripada sebuah perguruan tinggi itu ada di program studi. Jadi kegiatan-kegiatan seminar seperti ini harus didorong Ibu Bapak. Dan itu memang ada dapurnya di program studi. Saya lihat rangkaian kegiatannya dengan pembicara yang saya kira komitmen keilmuan, karir keilmuannya itu luar biasa. Termasuk juga Associate Professor Edwin Jurrens ya, ada Prof. Adrian Vickers nanti dan yang lain-lain. Itu tentu tidak mudah untuk mengundang beliau dan menghadirkan beliau di antara kita sehingga melanjutkan apa yang disampaikan oleh Bapak Prof. Dharma Putra. Ini harus betul-betul dimanfaatkan untuk memperkaya wawasan kita, terutama di bidang yang terkait dengan kajian budaya. Sekali lagi terima kasih Pak Prof. Sudah mempersiapkan acara ini dengan sangat baik. Ini adalah minggu pertama dari rangkaian kegiatan seminar. Tentu juga ucapan terima kasih saya sampaikan sekali lagi kepada Associate Professor Edwin Jurrens yang nanti akan berbagi pengalamannya, keilmuannya dengan kita semua. Ibu Bapak, topik ini sangat menarik. Saya bukan orang yang tepat berbicara tentang politik lingkungan begitu ya, the politics of environment. Saya akan mengawali dengan isu-isu global tentang lingkungan. Ibu Bapak sudah tahu dengan sangat baik itu ada global warming begitu ya. Ada ozone depletion, ada masalah-masalah air, water scarcity. Itu masalah-masalah global yang dihadapi kita semua di seluruh dunia. Untuk membuat lebih konkret terkait dengan political environment, saya mau bercerita sedikit begitu ya. Sekali lagi saya bukan orang yang tepat. Tadi saya pernah membaca sebuah berita begitu. Ibu Bapak barangkali tahu itu gubernur di negara bagian Amerika Serikat namanya Mauli Haley. Beliau sebagai gubernur itu menurut saya ada sebuah kebijakan politik yang sangat jelas, sangat eksplisit begitu. Dua di antaranya saya sebutkan bahwa paling lama 2030 itu negara bagian Massachusetts akan mencapai 100% clean electricity. Paling lama 2030. Kemudian paling lama 2030, negara bagian Massachusetts diharapkan bisa menambah 1 juta kendaraan listrik. Ini bagian daripada kebijakan yang diambil oleh pemerintah negara bagian di Massachusetts terkait dengan lingkungan, sehingga bisa tercipta dengan lingkungan yang bersih. Saya mulai dari ini karena ini menarik. Bagaimana sebuah negara bagian di Amerika Serikat, barangkali di belahan dunia lain, di Australia, di Eropa juga, di Asia juga, itu ada komitmen yang kuat untuk lingkungan. Sekali lagi saya bukan orang yang tepat, barangkali itu bisa dikategorikan sebagai politik lingkungan. Karena itu harus ada kemauan politik yang kuat dari pemerintah sendiri untuk menjaga lingkungan itu supaya tetap lestari. Dan saya paham betul, saya kira pemerintah, apakah itu pusat, daerah, itu tentu tidak bisa mengeluarkan kebijakan yang sangat kuat begitu tanpa didukung oleh budaya daripada masyarakat tersebut. Nah, kalau kita lihat di Indonesia, saya kira Ibu Bapak sudah paham lebih baik dari saya, maaf kalau ada yang salah. Di Indonesia ini masalah lingkungan itu sangat jelas lah. Misalnya saja, saya belum bicara di skala nasional, di tingkat provinsi saja, atau di kota saja, di Denpasar lah kita bicara. Sampah misalnya, sampah di Denpasar menjadi persoalan yang sangat penting sekarang ini, dan belum ada jalan keluar bagaimana menyelesaikan persoalan sampah. Itu satu hal kecil saja. Nah, kalau di tingkat nasional di Indonesia, pemerintah kita juga sekarang mendorong produksi kendaraan listrik, seperti dengan kebijakan yang diberlakukan di negara bagian Massachusetts lewat gubernurnya Maura Hini. Jadi sekali lagi barangkali ini bukan topik yang nanti mau disampaikan, tetapi saya sedikit memberikan latar belakang begitu. Jadi melihat apa yang terjadi secara global dan apa yang terjadi di Indonesia, jadi barangkali pengelolaan lingkungan itu perlu sebuah kebijakan politis begitu ya. Saya kira kebijakan legal barangkali tidak bisa menyelesaikan persoalan. Kemudian komitmen politik, tetapi barangkali ada peran serta masyarakat. Sekali lagi masalah sampah begitu, meskipun ada aturan yang keluar, kalau tidak ada budaya untuk tertib disiplin dalam mengelola sampah itu barangkali akan sangat sulit sekali. Begitu. Sehingga nanti perlu sinergi antara berbagai pihak begitu, bukan top down, tetapi ini harus berkolaborasi antara pemerintah, LSM, masyarakat, itu perlu sebuah budaya. Tentu dalam konteks kajian budaya ini akan sangat menarik menurut saya. Ya, saya kira lingkungan itu bisa didekati oleh sebuah perspektif dari kajian budaya. Sekali lagi saya tidak paham betul bagaimana mendekati, karena budaya itu bisa mendekati berbagai isu dan itu penting sekali dalam penyelesaian masalah. Karena secara hukum, administrasi, teknologi itu tidak bisa berdiri sendiri tanpa keterlibatan aspek budayanya. Sehingga tentu pemilihan topik ini nanti Associate Professor Edwin Jurrens orang yang sangat-sangat tepat, dan kita merasa beruntung beliau bisa hadir di acara ini. Nanti kita akan dengarkan dari beliau begitu apa yang akan beliau paparkan di sini, sehingga bisa memperkaya, memberikan insight kepada kita, perspektif, barangkali juga bisa memberikan inspirasi kepada para karya siswa itu bagaimana mendekati lingkungan secara politik, barangkali untuk membuat sebuah paper begitu. Jadi apresiasi saya atas nama pribadi dan mewakili segenap pimpinan untuk Pak Associate Professor Edwin Jurrens gitu ya, yang sudah berkenan memaparkan nanti sebuah topik yang sangat menarik dan sangat-sangat relevan untuk kita di Indonesia dan di Bali begitulah sebagai daerah tujuan wisata internasional. Jadi lingkungan itu menjadi isu yang sangat penting sekarang secara global maupun nasional bahkan lokal. Saya kira itu saja dari saya, Ibu Bapak. Sekali lagi saya memohon maaf sekiranya apa yang saya sampaikan tadi barangkali tidak dalam konteks nanti apa yang dibicarakan itu sebuah latar belakang yang sangat umum sekali yang saya sampaikan untuk memberikan sambutan dalam kegiatan ini. Sekali lagi terima kasih kepada Pak Prof. Dharma Putra, PhD, yang sudah menyelenggarakan kegiatan ini. Ini adalah minggu pertama, minggu awal dari rangkaian kegiatan seminar. Sekali lagi terima kasih luar biasa. ini tentu akan menjadikan hal yang meningkatkan visibilitas program studi S3 Kajian Budaya, Pak Prof. Sehingga harapan kita nanti bisa mendatangkan banyak mahasiswa lah. Jadi terima kasih. Sekali lagi Pak Associate Professor Edwin Jurrens, Ibu Bapak Guru Besar, dosen yang sudah hadir bergabung, para karya siswa S3 Kajian Budaya atau barangkali ada yang lain, Ibu Andani Pertiwi, terima kasih sekali lagi. Ibu Bapak, Ampura, mohon maaf, saya nanti izin Pak Prof. Setelah memberikan sambut ini, saya harus kembali lagi ke acara ritual ini. Di rumah dan nanti langsung pulang kampung. Jadi mohon izin saya yang tidak bisa bergabung terus di acara ini. Itu harapannya nanti seminar talk nanti ini menjadi produktif dan betul-betul bisa memberikan insight perspektif kepada kita semua, khususnya S3 Kajian Budaya, untuk memberikan sumbangsih keilmuan bagaimana lingkungan itu didekati secara politik ya. Sekali lagi terima kasih dan mohon maaf sekiranya ada yang salah dari apa yang Tiang sampaikan. Tiang akhiri dulu sambutan ini sebelum Tiang buka dengan Parama Santi, Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti Om. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom, nama budaya, salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Rahayu, Rahayu, Rahayu. Atas asung warakata nugraha ide Sang Yang Widiwasa Tuhan Yang Maha Esa, saya nyatakan kegiatan Cultural Studies Week dalam rangka hari ulang tahun S3 Kajian Budaya yang ke-23 dinyatakan dibuka secara resmi. Terima kasih. Saya kembali ke Bu Moderator ya.
Baik, terima kasih Bapak.
Sekalian saya izin ya, Ibu Bapak.
Silakan Bapak.
Silakan Ibu Moderator.
Baik Bapak Ibu peserta, sebentar lagi kita akan menginjak ke acara utama. Saya, Andani Pertiwi, akan menjadi moderator dalam webinar kita hari ini yang berjudul The Politics of the Environment in Indonesia Documentary Film, yang akan dibawakan oleh Associate Professor Edwin Jurrens dari Universitas Melbourne. Associate Professor Edwin Jurrens.
Terima kasih, mohon maaf izin dulu. Maaf. Pak Edwin, terima kasih Pak Edwin, Pak Prof. Dharma Putra, Ibu Bapak semua.
Pak Dekan.
Terima kasih.
Baik. Associate Professor Edwin Jurrens adalah Wakil Dekan Asosiasi Internasional Indonesia dan Associate Professor dalam Studi Indonesia di Asia Institute Fakultas Seni Universitas Melbourne. Publikasi terbarunya meliputi monograf The Art of Environmental Activism in Indonesia, Shifting Horizons di tahun 2023, dan Visual Media in Indonesia, Video Vanguard, serta volume yang diedit berjudul Digital Indonesia, Connectivity and Divergence. Dia juga merupakan co-editor seri buku ASEAN Visual Culture dari Amsterdam University Press dan editor regional The Newsletter of the International Institute for ASEAN Studies. Bapak Edwin, apakah sudah siap?
Ya, siap. Terima kasih Bu Andani. Ya, terima kasih banyak. Terima kasih kepada Pak Dekan dan juga Profesor Dharma Putra, sahabat lama. Jadi ini sebuah kehormatan buat saya juga. Terima kasih banyak atas undangannya. Senang sekali bisa ikut serta Cultural Studies Week ya. Dan juga ikut merayakan semua yang sudah dicapai oleh Fakultas Ilmu Budaya di Universitas Udayana. Presentasi saya dalam bahasa Inggris, nanti tanya jawab bisa bahasa campuran juga ya, silakan aja. I will try to share a PowerPoint. Can you see the PowerPoint slide?
Yes.
Yeah, baguslah. So, and also, yeah, in terms of the length of the presentation, feel free to cut me off whenever needed. We still want to have some time for question and answer. I can finish at any point. So probably it's about 40 minutes or so. Okay. I'll just give you an overview of some of the themes I'll be talking about today. So Pak Dekan also already addressed the global context. So very briefly, I will be talking about the global revival of documentary, and specifically environmental documentary. After that, there will be a focus specifically on Indonesian environmental documentary with 3 case studies. The first one is Tanah Ibu Kami atau Our Mother's Land. The second one is...
Excuse me, Edwin, could you put the slide on the slideshow mode, please?
Yes,
If you could.
Let me see. Okay.
Oh, excellent.
Yep. Is that all right? Okay. So that's the first one. So this is the overview of the themes. Can you see it clearly, the slides?
Yes, great.
Okay, good. So yeah, I mentioned the 3 main case studies for today. So that's Our Mother's Land, Semester, and also some of the Watchdog documentaries. One of the focus points will be about how some of these documentaries specifically focus on female agency in environmental activism, as documented in the films. 2 of the main achievements of these documentaries are, first of all, the critical analysis of environmental politics. And the second one is the promotion of socially, culturally, and environmentally sustainable solutions. So just by way of introduction, documentary used to be shaped by notions about its limited accessibility in terms of treatment of subject matter and means of display. Due to its reliance on non-fictional content and screenings at film festivals and art house cinemas, conventional documentary didn't have the same reach and popular appeal as fictional genres for mainstream cinema and television. However, especially with the emergence of digital and online production, distribution, and screening technologies since the 1990s, the genre has been able to significantly expand its reach and audiences. This also applies to contemporary environmental documentary, which has been using a variety of perspectives, formats, and platforms to reach diverse audiences and address some of the most pressing issues of our times. So I mentioned the international context. Some of the early examples from the 1990s from France include a documentary called Microcosmos from 1996, which was about the lives of insects. There's also a documentary called Winged Migration in English from 2001, also from France, about bird migration. While some of the examples from the US include a PBS program called Cadillac Desert, Water and the Contamination of Nature from 1997, which is about water pollution in California. And Affluenza, also from 1997, about the social and environmental impact of overconsumption. In the mid-2000s, former US Vice President Al Gore presented the issue of climate change to a worldwide audience through the documentary An Inconvenient Truth from 2006, which is often referred to as the most widely viewed and known environmental documentary. Critics have also pointed to the danger, however, that television staples like Discovery or National Geographic Channel productions are edited for sensationalism and even for soiling the reputation among the science community for misrepresenting research. At the same time, however, the involvement of Hollywood celebrities, for instance, has also contributed to reviving the documentary genre and raising awareness about a variety of anthropogenic disasters. Some of the examples are Leonardo DiCaprio's co-production and also narration of a documentary called The 11th Hour from 2007, which is available on digital platforms such as Netflix, Amazon Video, iTunes, YouTube, and Vimeo. In Indonesia, film actor and celebrity Nicholas Saputra co-produced Semester, literal universe, but also released under the English title of Islands of Faith in 2018. And this environmental documentary was funded by the European Union and has also been streamed on Netflix. And we will come back to this documentary later in some more detail. Another one of my main focus points for today, another Indonesian 55-minute documentary is Tanah Ibu Kami, or Our Mother's Land. This film is also accessible on digital platforms such as YouTube and Facebook, and it has been screened at festivals such as the Ubud Writers and Readers Festival in 2000, and also the online Livable Planet Festival in 2021. And it was even the winner of the 2021 Spirit of the Activism Award of the Wild and Scenic Film Festival in Nevada City, California. The popularity of this film, with tens of thousands of viewers, and also because of the awards just mentioned, have renewed interest in environmental documentary in Indonesia and around the world. Particularly with the intensified social and political debate about climate change in the 1990s, and also the popularization of digital information and communication technology. Drawing on her own sources and also those of the Gecko Project, producer and investigative journalist Febriana Vierdaus explores in this film the unique responses of female activists in different parts of the Indonesian archipelago to some of the main local and global environmental challenges of our time. I will provide some more detail later, but her interviewees include Sukina from the Kendeng mountain range in Jawa Tengah, Lodia Umatan and Aleta Baun from the Molo Highlands in Timur, Nusa Tenggara Timur, Eva Bande and Yu Patmi from Luwuk, the capital of the Banggai Regency in Sulawesi Tengah, and Farwisa Farhan from the Kawasan Ecosystem Leuser in Aceh. While also providing impressive drone-facilitated footage of the scenery in each location, the environmental documentary's primary focus is not on nature as such, but on the moving, intimate and illuminating one-on-one conversations between Vierdaus and the local activists. By using a soft voice, slow pace, modest body language, and gentle physical contact, Vierdaus makes the women feel confident to speak for themselves and on behalf of their communities. In the process, they reveal personal and often also traumatic experiences from the struggle against environmental and social injustice. So Sukina, for instance, discusses the role of a predominantly female protest movement against the establishment of cement factories in the Kendeng mountain range, while Umatan and Baun explain how local women have been using their weaving looms as a tool to obstruct the exploitation and destruction of the sacred Molo Hills by the mining industry. Bande was detained for leading community action against the palm oil industry in the Banggai Regency. And she and Padmi detail the impact that some of the violence and detention has had on themselves and their families. Farhan, in the final part of the documentary, highlights her activism in the realms of research, media campaigns, and policy making for the protection of the Leuser conservation area in northern Sumatra. A striking message from many of the stories is not merely that the protests have been led by women, but also that these protests must be led by women. Various interviewees explain that the women have first-hand knowledge of nature and environmental change due to their management and execution of daily tasks such as farming, cleaning, cooking, and trading food and handicraft. With their preparedness to give up these essential tasks, sometimes for up to a year, in order to lead and participate in environmental action, the women have tried to convey the urgency of the matter for the well-being of their families, communities, and society as a whole. They also believe their social skills, emotional strength, and physical control have reduced the possible risk of escalation of public protest and have contributed to the longevity of the environmental movement. So Our Mother's Land presents women's stories, experiences, actions, and perspectives in a comprehensive way. Beyond the representation of the producer, Febriana Vierdaus, an interviewer in the documentary, and other female protagonists as such, through a variety of mutually strengthening visual, structural, and discursive elements. The film can be seen as an example of filmmaking with women rather than about women. It seeks to avoid objectifying the female characters by focusing on the relationality between the camera, the journalist, the interviewees, and the natural social and political surroundings, and also the intended viewers. So it presents visually, structurally, and discursively an approach that renowned Vietnamese academic and filmmaker Trinh Thi Minh coined speaking nearby. She explains this as a speaking that doesn't objectify, doesn't point to an object as if it's distant from the speaking subject or absent from the speaking place, but a speaking that reflects on itself and can come very close to a subject without seizing or claiming it. So this process of speaking nearby is guided by the actions, movements, and reflections of Febriana Firdaus. The documentary has a diary-style structure in which the viewer follows Firdaus on flights to different corners of Indonesia's vast archipelago. It also includes footage of the journalist literally keeping a diary by typing notes on a laptop computer in a hotel room during various transitions in her journey. And some of these notes have been published as essays on the Mongabe and the Gecko Project news sites. Academics have observed that the diary format has been a powerful and effective tool for female documentary makers across the world, especially in places like Iran, where they face censorship, gender discrimination, or political retaliation. And some of these challenges, Febriana Firdaus has also experienced in her own journalism career. But by using this format, she's had creative opportunities for sharing both very personal and critical reflections on her encounters with her interviewees and also the causes they stand for. So one of these stories, as mentioned, refers to the women from Kendeng. That's actually the first segment of the documentary. And in this narrative, Firdaus explains that she can identify with these women, as she's also from the same region. She's also from East Java herself. She also states that these women have emerged at the vanguard and have become the leaders of the resistance. In the documentary, in the documentary Tanah Ibu Kami, if we could come back to this notion of speaking nearby, this is translated in how Firdaus tries to travel to relatively remote locations, such as Kendeng, and meet and interact with women in their own environment, their own social and cultural environment, which is unlike more distant approaches in more observational or archival footage-based forms of documentary. So also in terms of documentary making, it's quite innovative. So this notion of speaking nearby is reflected in Firdaus's strolls with interlocutors to places strongly related to their everyday life or work, where they feel comfortable to sit together and have a conversation. The women frequently provide each other physical support with walking or sitting down, while they also stay in close distance during the conversation. And as mentioned, Firdaus herself uses slow pace, soft voice, pauses, and also the local language, Javanese, to make her conversation partners feel at ease. Her body language is very modest, and she makes or avoids eye contact where appropriate. What's also interesting, apart from dialogue, is the use of songs as a medium, an important medium for speaking nearby in this documentary. So, for instance, when followed by Firdaus through the fields in a village in the Rembang Regency of North Kendeng, Sukina sings a verse from a local song about Mother Earth. And those three lines go like, Mother Earth has given, Mother Earth is wounded, Mother Earth will seek justice. In her home in Molo, Lodia Umatan also sings a song in her local language while weaving in the presence of Firdaus. her song refers to women caring for each other, so they are united in their struggle to protect the land. And through the documentary, it's the closeness between the women and between the women and their surroundings that is also strengthened by background music, by ambient piano music, as well as the sounds of nature itself. And in various intervals, the poetic sounds and images are, however, dramatically disrupted by live footage of demonstrations and sometimes quite also violent clashes between the protesters and thugs. So this seems to work as bringing back the viewers from the dreamlike world of film and also remind them of the harsh realities of the women's everyday lives. And in the PowerPoint slide on the right, you also see that the documentary makes use of animation. So the animation on the right is a representation of the real life demonstration on the left. Our Modest Land is part of a broader development in Indonesian environmental documentary making to represent female agency and gender perspectives. As mentioned, some other examples are some of the productions by Watchdog. Samin versus Semen is one of them from 2015. And the other one that I showed to you before is Semester from 2020. I will discuss both documentaries to also facilitate some comparison and draw out some differences and similarities with Our Modest Land. So the 39-minute documentary Samin versus Semen is directed by investigative journalist Dandi Dwi Laksono and, as mentioned, produced by the Indonesian documentary production house Watchdog. In this specific example from their productions, we also see a focus on female resistance against the cement industry in the Kendeng area, which, as mentioned, is also one of the themes in Our Modest Land. So the title refers to the Saminist belief of the local communities who are, just put it back, who are leading the protest movement. The belief system is named after Surontiko Samin, a peasant who organized peaceful resistance against Dutch colonialism at the end of the 19th century, which also this resistance included ignoring colonial land ownership laws and taxes. The contemporary approaches of local environmental movements are similar to, and in some cases derived from, the principles of Saminism, including organic farming, independent education, religious pluralism, and egalitarian Japanese language use. One of the key characters in this documentary is Gunarti, a female activist leader and follower of Saminism. Gunarti explains how she supports her household of four with a modest income by adhering to an environmentally friendly and waste and cost reducing lifestyle that is shown in various close-ups, including organic farming and the use of biogas. She also provides homeschooling to her children with an emphasis on farming, egalitarianism, and moral behavior. In addition to explaining her role as farmer, mother, and educator, the documentary highlights her activities as an environmental activist as well. It shows her on a tour to villages in the Kendeng region that have been under threat from the construction of factories. In the villages, she uses the local language, Japanese, to urge groups of local women not to sell their land. She explains to them that the land and not the money will provide the food and sustain the livelihoods of the future generations in the region. It also includes interviews with male farmers who had received only minor compensation for their land. They have been forced into low-paying jobs while also experiencing the environmental impact of the digging activities that have been going on. So the documentary explains that despite local communities winning court cases, including Supreme Court in 2016, the construction of factories has continued. And in the documentary, we also find mobile phone footage of thugs intimidating protesters. The documentary ends with drone footage of a procession of women, men, and children through the rice fields carrying an Indonesian flag and a reject the cement factories in Java sign, suggesting that despite the challenges, the women-led movement is there to stay. Now, the third example, which also has a link with Bali. So Semesta, or Islands of Faith, also confirms the leading role of women in environmental movements throughout the archipelago. The documentary is directed by female professional film director Khairul Nisa and co-produced by Mandy Marahimin and actor and celebrity Nicholas Saputra. And as mentioned, they also received support from the Indonesian Ministry of Environment and Forestry and the European Union. As indicated by its title, and similar to the connections drawn between Samanism and the preservation of the Kendeng Mountains in Samin versus Semen, the documentary seeks to show how environmental care and protection and the balance between humans and nature, as also identified in this quote, is ingrained in the main different belief systems that shape Indonesia's unique religious and ethnic diversity. So this documentary presents examples from the 7 corners of the archipelago. For instance, from Bali, a priest explaining the practices of silence and meditation during the day of Nyepi. Nyepi focuses on the cleansing of the body and the mind and the restoration of balance in humans and between humans and their surroundings, including nature. But it also dramatically reduces carbon emissions on the day due to the minimization of waste-producing activity and even the closure of the international airport for a day. Another example shown in this documentary is the Gawai harvest celebration by the Dayak Iban community in Kalimantan Barat. And members of this community explain how they preserve nature and maintain food security by distinguishing between sacred conservation forests, production forests for building supplies, and residential forests for daily needs. The documentary also presents a Catholic priest leading a hydro energy project in Flores, an Islamic religious leader from a village in Aceh, mitigating tension in the cohabitation between humans and elephants, and organic farming initiatives near and in the urban centers of Yogyakarta and Jakarta. So in all cases, local religious leaders from different faiths make references in their sermons and conservations to people's religious obligation to control their behavior, care for nature, and protect all of God's creatures. The segment specifically dealing with the role of women focuses on an all-female Protestant congregation in the Raja Ampat Regency in West Papua. The women mention their own so-called SASI, which is a local conservation scheme that temporarily bans the harvesting of sea fauna. The documentary shows how after a ban on fishing for 6 months, restrictions are lifted for 1 week, during which, with the help of village children, the women search and dive for shellfish, sea cucumbers, lobsters, and other sea fauna. The women prepare their own food and manage their own incomes, but they are also confronted with theft and destruction from male outsiders who illegally hunt for sea creatures during SASI and also use methods such as air compressors, poison, and explosion. In church services, psalms are sung and references are made to the sea animals, Garden of Eden, and the Day of Judgment. So Islands of Faith confirms the boundaries of the nation state and the importance of religion in state ideology. And similar to Samin versus Semen, our modest land, it also provides a nationwide coverage and establishes links between gender equity, social justice, religious diversity, and environmental sustainability. However, it refrains from explicitly identifying the socio-political factors and actors responsible for environmental destruction, instead opting for text segments with rather generic messages and data about environmental pollution and people's responsibility in reflecting on and implementing possible solutions. Tanah Ibu Kami and the Watchdog Productions, on the other hand, explicitly identified the policies and companies responsible for environmental and socio-cultural wrongdoing. They also provide intimate portraits in which women activists share their personal experiences and environmental and socio-political insights. While Our Mother's Land presents a more poetic, feminine aesthetic, both documentaries also use the raw footage of mobile phone devices in an authentic do-it-yourself style of citizen journalism to cover women's daily activities and involvement in environmental campaigns and sometimes dangerous protest action. And such efforts to identify the interrelations between the environment, politics, and society, in line with the critical thinking in the academic and activist fields of political ecology and ecofeminism, are crucial for substantial and enduring forms of environmental care. Just asking how are we going with time? I still have maybe 2 slides or so. Do we still have time for a little bit longer for the presentation?
No, it's okay.
Yeah, is that all right? Okay, it won't be long. Just to conclude, it's not only about identifying issues, providing socio-political analysis, but some of these documentaries also try to provide possible alternatives, sustainable alternatives for the future. And I just want to give you one example by way of conclusion, and this is from the Watchdog production house. They are also known for producing a series which is called Ekspedisi Indonesia Biru, or Blue Indonesia Expedition. And this title is actually derived from an idea of the blue economy by the Belgian economist and entrepreneur Gunther Pauli. And you see his book on the right in the PowerPoint slide. So just to quickly explain this idea and also how it comes back in the documentary. So this idea derives, the idea is actually different, different from the idea of the blue economy that is developed by organizations such as the World Bank. In the case of the World Bank, it focuses very much about the use of ocean sources for economic growth, improved livelihoods, job creation, and also ocean ecosystem health. However, rather than promoting environmental sustainability, this type of blue economy can inadvertently also lead to the further neoliberal exploitation and destruction of the Earth's final economic frontier. The blue economy, as developed by Gunther Pauli and applied by Watchdog, is different. The main principle here is that sustainability, in their view, is only foreseeable when our system eliminates the concept of waste and starts cascading nutrients and energy as nature does. So this is a quote from Pauli. A prominent real-life example that he gives is a coffee company that turns one-way revenue model into a three-way revenue model by generating income not only from the core business, coffee, but also from using the coffee waste for mushroom farming, and then using the waste from mushroom farming for producing animal feed. By reducing the environmental impact of product packaging and transportation, this model also lowers the financial costs for producers and consumers. And in his 2010 report to the Club of Rome, titled The Blue Economy, Pauli provided a list of 100 of such innovative projects around the globe, with a claimed potential of creating 100 million jobs in 10 years. According to some critics, Laksana's blue economy-inspired documentaries provide romanticized micro-level solutions to structural micro-level problems and fail to stimulate an organized movement for change. I argue, however, that Laksana's criticality in activism interconnects environmental problems with social issues, political conditions, and economic principles. In line with his thought, he presents the blue economy as a different conceptualizing of and dealing with the natural environment, including and beyond the planet's blue seas. Some of the documentaries address how marginalized communities have been affected by harmful environmental, social, and economic impact of large-scale neoliberal development projects by multinational companies. And one very popular example, which has more than 40 million views on YouTube, is Sexy Killers, which is about the coal mining industry. So this is more of a socio-political analysis. But some of the other documentaries really try to promote economic initiatives, so try to think about solutions too, that are cost-efficient and waste-reducing. In the Ekspedisi Indonesia Biru documentaries, for instance, there are examples about the Boti and also the Kasepuhan Cipta Kala ethnic communities in West Timor and West Java, respectively, who focus on alternative economic practices that aim at social and environmental sustainability rather than the accumulation of capital. In the same series, other documentaries discuss the benefits of turning the waste from animals and humans into sources of renewable energy. And I argue that these are not naive visualization of micro solutions from the past, but actually very respectfully contextualized and millions of viewers drawing representations of previously ignored local practices and forms of wisdom that are also key to contemporary thinking about the future of the planet. Moreover, through their narratives and participatory modes of representation and distribution, the documentaries have the potential to create connection, solidarity, and collaboration between people from different social classes and national or ethnic backgrounds, including marginalized indigenous groups in Indonesia. So yeah, I think that's all from me for now. So thanks for your interest, and if we still have time, yeah, very happy also to have some discussion. Ya, terima kasih ya.
Oke, terima kasih Bapak Edwin. Baik Bapak Ibu, itulah tadi pemaparan materi dari Bapak Edwin. Jika ada yang ingin bertanya, silakan raise hand. Dan saya sudah lihat ada di kolom chat yang bertanya, apakah Bapak atau Ibu ada ingin bertanya secara langsung? Silakan. Silakan Bapak atas nama Ada, silakan apakah ingin bertanya langsung atau bagaimana? Ya. Tidak ada jawaban, barangkali nanti
Okay, thank you.
Ya, silakan Bapak.
Good morning. I have problem relate the politic of the environment in Indonesian documentary film, and this who are the politic agents in the film semester and Tanah Ibu Kami, and second, what does a politic look like in the film semester, film semesta and Tanah Ibu Kami. I'm from Yoga, alumni Kajian Budaya Unut. Thank you.
Bapak Edwin, apakah akan menjawab langsung?
Okay.
Pertanyaan berikutnya.
Terima kasih banyak. Yeah, thanks a lot for your question. That's a good one. Yeah, so I mentioned politics in the title because I think it's important that in the examples that we discussed today, it's not just about environmental problems. Not in isolation. It's not just, you know, screening of beautiful landscapes or screening of environmental issues as such, but it's also about interconnecting them with social, political, and cultural dynamics. When it comes to politics, one thing I think that really all three of them try to emphasize is the agency of local people, which is a form of politics. So local women or religious leaders, ordinary citizens, activists, people with specialized expertise in the environment. They all try to do something about the problem. So in that sense, agency, social agency, cultural agency, is a form of politics. And then, of course, it also refers to a broader context of politics. So some of the documentaries, some in more detail than others, they also give some insight in what actually is the source of the problem. So that can be because of certain policies. It can be because of the policies of politicians, but it can also be the policies of certain businesses that are at the roots of the environmental problem. So it gives a context, it gives a contemporary context. In some cases, it also gives a historical context. I think, for instance, in the example of Samin, it also goes to colonialism, that some of the issues actually have their roots in the exploitation of nature by the Dutch during colonial times. And some of these practices have continued or have been reshaped in contemporary Indonesia, but are still there. So, yeah, I mean, as mentioned in semester, there's less explicit identification of, specific figures or specific companies. In the case of Tanah Ibu Kami, and especially the case of the Watchdog documentaries, they refer to very specific policies. One form of criticism, for instance, that comes up in the Watchdog documentaries, they've produced hundreds of documentaries, but one thing that they regularly refer back to is some of the environmental impact of the introduction of the Omnibus Law. So, this is a law meant to create jobs, to create working opportunities, but they also highlight, some of the possible negative environmental impact that the increase of investment and the expansion of all sorts of industries that are involved in extracting natural resources can also cause. So I think that's more or less what is meant by politics in this research. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Bapak Yoga, bagaimana? Apakah ada yang ingin tambahkan atau cukup? Cukup ya? Oke, baik. Untuk Bapak Ibu peserta lainnya, apakah ada yang ingin ditanyakan? Jika ingin bertanya, bisa raise hands. Oke, ada dari Ibu Ide Ayu Taripuspa. Silahkan Ibu.
Ya, terima kasih. Thank you for your opportunity for me to ask in Zoom link Zoom ya. Okay, Mr. Edwin. Yeah, thank you for your paper. Yeah, I ask you the environment in Bali is included in the Trihita Karana, namely Palemahan. How does a documentary include this in a documentary film? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, terima kasih Ibu Ida Ayu ya. So yeah, I think with as mentioned also in reply to the previous question. So I think the environment is such a interesting focus point because it actually brings together so many different perspectives. it really forces us to think about issues, contemporary issues in a holistic way. So it's, again, it's not just about nature, but it's also about culture and politics and religion and society. And I think especially with the example of Semester, they refer to the importance of thinking about traditional values, which are not, which are not old-fashioned. They are contemporary values, but they have their roots in tradition, related to culture and religion, that may or may not have found their way into politics as well. But as a source of thinking about sustainable solutions for the future, and balance between humans and nature is crucial. Of course, it's one of the most important ones. I suppose this also brings us to the point that these documentaries, they do not necessarily, or they do not make an argument about restoring nature, in its authentic form, which is something that's impossible. But it's more about managing it in a responsible way, in a sustainable way for the future. People are here, humans are here, and it's about this cohabitation, this balance between humans and nature, that should be rethought, that has to be changed in order to be sustainable. But drawing on cultural knowledge, religious wisdom, the knowledge and experience of, as outlined in my presentation, of also of women in particular, can provide some clues to how to do this process of rethinking, how to come up with solutions, and try to combine this traditional knowledge also with contemporary practices, with contemporary technology, with thinking about how to build infrastructure, how to manage waste, etc. So again, it comes back then, in the end, it also comes back to politics. It's about how to include some of this wisdom in policies and political practices. But yeah, it's absolutely crucial. And of course, we can learn a lot. My knowledge is very limited, but I'm sure we can learn a lot from Bali in particular. So yeah, I think that's.
Thank you, Mr. Edwin.
Yeah, you're most welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, thank you.
Baik, terima kasih Bu Dayutari Puspa. Saya lupa tadi memberitahukan bahwa untuk sesi ini ada 3 orang penanya dulu, dan yang ketiga ada Ibu Diah Permana ya. Ya. Silahkan Ibu Diah.
Excuse me, Edwin, could you stop the PowerPoint sharing so we can make a bigger pictures?
Oh yeah, sure. Yep, sorry. Yep.
Thank you.
Terima kasih, Ibu Moderator. Mr. Edwin Jurrens, thank you very much for your beautiful insight this morning. It is really eye-opening what you have shared with us. And actually, I would like to ask about things that is not, maybe not directly related to what you have explained before, but somehow ada hubungannya ya. There is a link between the situation what Bali face today. As you know, we do have problems such as garbage and then traffic congestions everywhere, and then also the cultural degradation of the Balinese. And maybe just a direct question to you, what do you think we shall do to keep the balance of this Trihita Karana, what was mentioned before in the question? realizing or related to the problems that we face here in Bali? Thank you. That is my question.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ibu Dia Pemana. Oh, that's a difficult question. I think going back to the previous argument, in the end, I think there's a lot that normal, ordinary citizens can do, but it should be supported, sustained also by a broader political structure. And I think that's the main challenge. I mean, yeah, not just in Indonesia, also in Australia and also globally. I think there's all sorts of very inspirational people, practices, local wisdoms that are there, that are happening, that are real. And the examples of the documentary makers and the people, communities, and practices represented in the documentaries are very good examples. So I think to promote this visual medium, that's one tool of trying to create awareness and finding solutions. And that's also my personal interest and my personal belief. I feel I'm very inspired by the sincerity and the ideas and creative practices of the documentary makers, as well as the people represented in their films. But if it comes to the bigger picture, the long-term solution, at some point you would hope, in order to make all of this possible on a large scale, that is also being taken up in policies, in politics, in business practices. And I think this is not necessarily something that we can expect from the same people, from the documentary makers or from the local activists, but there needs to be follow-up steps by intermediaries and eventually also by people making decisions that have impact on millions of people. And I think that really brings us into the political realm, and that's such a unpredictable and enormous force. It's not easy to find a clear answer to how we can expect that level to step on board as well. I mean, one thing that everyone can do, of course, is to participate in elections and to vote for the people that do have this green agenda and also a commitment to it. But as we know, there's all sorts of challenges, including also conflicts, global conflicts. And these global conflicts, they are not only about politics and human suffering, but even the conflicts themselves, they have a huge impact on the environment as well. It's sometimes something that is not highlighted not acknowledged at all in history books, if it's about history of wars or conflicts. The human suffering is something that is being highlighted of course, for obvious reasons, for good reasons. But if we also think about historically about the effect that some of these historical conflicts have had in terms of environmental destruction, that has been gigantic. So it's a difficult question to answer, because we have these, we do have these different levels of action. And talking about creative people, activists, the documentaries, that's an influential medium. It's an important source of knowledge and inspiration, but obviously it can't stop there. But it's and I think that it's also again, it makes the research interesting and important, but also very complex. So if it comes to the bigger solution, I think it's hoping for a new generation of environmentally aware politicians and business leaders. And if that can come through education, through media, through art, I mean, that's the hope. Whether it's enough, I mean, some people will be skeptical about it. So maybe that's all from me for now.
Yes, thank you, Pak Edwin. I totally agree with your insights that we cannot answer it directly, but I do agree that maybe education is a very fundamental thing that we have to start with, because I have just back from Japan, for example. I've been there several times, and I'm always, amazed by their discipline, their attitude, how they, we cannot find many bin over there, waste bin. And that means that every single trash is actually the responsibility of individual. So that means it must be a clear fundamental education that they have been invested into children, that they realize how important it is to, act clearly, that we have to, respect the nature with, making as less trash as possible, waste as possible. And this is your own responsibility. So the government is not providing you with many trash bins on the road or on the street, but, people react that way. So everybody is aware of that, So I think this kind of basic way of thinking has to be planned into the younger generation, especially because, okay, the elder generation, maybe they cannot really be changed in that way, but we can create a new generation. Yeah, the younger people have to be, educated in such a way. So thank you very much for your answers. It is really a nice insights from you. Thank you.
Yep. And I fully agree, with the young generation. Yeah, that's the future, that's our hope. Yeah.
Baik, terima kasih Ibu Diah Permana. Ya, itu tadi sudah ada 3 pertanyaan, Bapak Edwin. Is it okay if we do the second session? Because the schedule is only 1 hour. So if we do the second session, it will be like more than 1 hour. Is it okay?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Ya, kita akan buka sesi kedua. Bapak Ibu silakan jika ada yang ingin bertanya bisa raise hands, atau jika tidak bisa langsung bertanya bisa melalui kolom chat. Silakan. Oke. Sembari menunggu, apakah ada tambahan dari Prof. Dharma barangkali?
Yeah, thank you, Edwin. Actually, I have a very simple question on the name of the genre. We call it a documentary film, and the terminology of documentary often make an association of something that made for archive, not for massive viewing or something like that. Do you have any idea whether the commentary genre is still appropriate to this kind of movie? Because as you just shown us, so many environmental related film raise a serious issue, and they have a interesting title like a conventional movie that we can watch in the cinema, like Sexy Killer, Samasta, and something like that. And also you might have watched it before, the movie also called documentary movie on the dirty food, watched by a million of people. So I'm just asking about the name of the genre, documentary. It's so undermining the quality, the goal, and the aim of the content of the movie. Thank you, Edwin.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Professor Dharma. Yeah, I agree. I think that's one of the things that I find really interesting. It forces us looking at looking at these films. It forces us to rethink the notion of documentary. And I fully agree. I mean, I suppose the conventional connotations of the genre is quite limited, maybe even elitist, limited to film festivals, to niche audiences, archives, as you mentioned. Also historically, it has had talking about colonialism. It also has its roots in some of the colonial documentary practices for very specific political or educational or propaganda reasons. So I think there's two options. I mean, now with the introduction of all sorts of new technologies, do-it-yourself technology, the digital platforms like YouTube and Facebook, and then there's also new television platforms like Netflix. I suppose there's two options then, whether to no longer use the term documentary and to talk about these productions in terms of social media or in terms of film or television or something else. But I think it might also be interesting to keep the idea of documentary and to use the new practices actually also to try and redefine the genre. So what if we call these films documentary? Yeah, what is characteristic of them? What is different from previous documentary? Yeah, one thing really I think is more participatory modes of production, distribution, and also consumption, especially with these films launched on platforms like YouTube. It opens up a lot of different new opportunities, especially in terms of audience interaction. Again, it's not limited to a very limited audience at a film festival, but people can add their comments, they can discuss with each other. Something like YouTube in itself also functions as an archive, a new type of archive. I mean, it's not just a one-off screening, but it can stay there for years, and people can come back to the same documentary, rewatch it, engage in new discussion. So in a way, it also keeps it topical, as well as an archive of issues that happen at a certain point in time. In terms of the creativity, we see an interesting mix of different types of media. I think also from the presentation, it's not just film, but there's also animation, there's mobile phone footage, there's all sorts of voiceovers, inclusion of text. So also in terms of creativity, there's many new things happening in terms of duration as well. Some documentaries are very short, maybe max 10 minutes. Others are longer than we expect. Even some of the most, I like the Sexy Killers, it's actually a really long documentary. In spite of that, it has more than, probably by now, about 50 million views on YouTube, which is very impressive and really, again, makes us rethink the notion of documentary. So personally, I like to keep on using the term, but in a way that, but then also, forcing myself to try and redefine it and to see, what is different from the documentary practice and the connotations of the genre previously.
Thank you, Edwin. That's great. Thank you. Andani?
Baik, terima kasih Prof dan juga Bapak Edwin. Untuk Bapak Ibu peserta lainnya, apakah ada lagi yang ingin ditanyakan? Bisa raise hands. Oke.
Ya, kalau tidak ada mungkin cukup Andani, kita
Baik.
bisa lanjutkan.
Jika tidak ada, karena sudah ada yang bertanya tadi dan juga waktu kian bergulir, untuk webinar kita hari ini saya cukupkan. Sebagai penutup, apakah ada tambahan dari Prof. Dharma? Silakan, Prof.
Ya, hanya mengucapkan terima kasih yang luar biasa untuk Edwin Jurrens atas presentasi yang luar biasa. Kita jadi paham bahwa ada begitu banyak orang yang sangat peduli dengan lingkungan dan melakukan pekerjaan untuk memperbaiki dan untuk kehidupan orang banyak. Bagi kami yang tidak memiliki perhatian khusus tentang lingkungan, tentang film, hari ini mendapat sebuah optimisme bahwa begitu banyak orang yang bekerja untuk kebaikan orang lain. Jadi sekali lagi terima kasih Edwin. Mudah-mudahan lain kali bisa lagi berbagi untuk kami di kajian budaya dan di Indonesia secara umum. Mohon maaf kalau ada yang kurang-kurang dan sampai jumpa di lain kesempatan. Andani.
Ya, baik, terima kasih Prof. Itu tadi penutup juga dari Prof. Dharma, dan sekali lagi terima kasih Bapak Edwin Jurrens. Dan juga sebelum berakhir, saya juga ingin membacakan dua orang dari kolom chat. Kayaknya ini harus saya bacakan. Yang pertama, good morning, afternoon, warmest greetings from UPN Veteran Jawa Timur Tourism Study, Faculty of Social Policy. Kemudian ada dari good morning from STKIP Persada Katulistiwa Sintang, Kalimantan Barat, West of Borneo. Jadi pesertanya tidak hanya di Bali, tapi juga ada seluruh Indonesia. Baik, sebelum kita akhiri, akan ada penyerahan sertifikat untuk Bapak Edwin. Kami persilakan untuk yang akan share sertifikat.
Mungkin Andani langsung bisa?
Oh, yang dari ini saya belum pegang sepertinya, Prof. Untuk Bapak Edwinnya. Bentar. Ya. Untuk ininya saya belum pegang, Prof, yang untuk narasumbernya.
Oh ya, ya.
Ya.
Mestinya saya ada. Di mana dia? Mohon maaf. Ya. Ini dia datang sekarang. Ya, apresiasi untuk Edwin. Terima kasih banyak.
Terima kasih banyak Profesor Dharma Putra dan juga Ibu Andani ya sebagai moderator. Dan terima kasih banyak atas semua yang hadir dan tadi yang tanya juga ya, diskusinya menarik juga.
Ya.
Baik, demikianlah webinar kita hari ini. Terima kasih atas partisipasi Bapak Ibu. Sampai berjumpa di webinar berikutnya, Cultural Studies Week. Saya tutup dengan Om Santi 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 Om. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom, rahayu, rahayu, rahayu. Terima kasih.
Ya.